So we're going to continue our preview series for the upcoming 2024-25 OHL season. Yesterday, I did a video looking at the East Division. Today, we're now going to take a look at the Central. And in the Central Division, we have one team that appears to be the clear favorite overall, and then everyone else trying to still find their place in the division this upcoming season. So with these videos, I'm going to go alphabetical, and we'll start off by looking at how they were last season and what they could be like going into the regular season, which means we start things off with the Barrie Colts. Last year, they placed fourth in the Central Division with a record of 28, 36, and 4. Good for 60 points, and of course, that was good enough for the final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. The specialty teams were an issue last year. They had the fourth best power play in the division at 16.3%, and their penalty kill was fifth in the Central at 66.2%. So an area of concern for Marty Williamson and the coaching staff last year, and we'll look to improve on that going into this upcoming season. The leading scorers last year, the top three, Bo Jelsma, 37 goals, 44 assists, 81 points. Riley Patterson, who was eventually selected by the Vancouver Canucks, he had 29 goals, 33 assists, good for 62 points. And Cole Beaudoin, the first-round pick of the Utah Hockey Club, he had 28 goals, 34 assists, 62 points for the Barrie Colts. In net, Sam Hillebrandt had a great season, an .899 save percentage, while Ben West, he had an .888 save percentage, as those two combined to really help propel the Barrie Colts into that final playoff spot down the stretch. Because for Barrie last year, they looked out of it midway through the season, and at the trade deadline, that's where they sent out veterans like Connor Punnett and also Jacob Frasca, and then Edward Chalet eventually sent off to the Kitchener Rangers as well, because they were dealing with a lot of injuries as well. If you remember, Bo Akey suffered a shoulder injury near the beginning of the season and didn't play for the rest of the year. He's expected to return for the 2024-25 season, and you have to expect that Bo Akey will be motivated to show what he's capable of out on the ice. So this is a Barrie team that has a pretty strong returning cast, from Bo Jelsma to Cole Beaudoin, Riley Patterson, Kayshawn Aitchison, and of course Sam Hillebrandt, to name a few. And they've also just added Tristan Bertucci this week from the Flint Firebirds in a three-way trade, which saw Jack Browdy and Blair Scott end up with the Niagara Ice Dogs. And I think this Bertucci trade is going to go a long way for the defense of this Barrie Colts. Expect to see Bertucci and Akey maybe in the top pairing for the regular season, but that could change as the year progresses. But things are shaping up pretty good for the Barrie Colts going into the season. A lot more optimism than what we saw even a year ago. So they do have a commitment as well from Dallas Stars draft pick Emil Hemming. He's going to be one of the import positions this year. So he's coming over from Finland. It's an exciting time right now for the Barrie Colts, and I do expect them to challenge for top spot in the Central Division. It's going to be tough in that rivalry with the Steelheads, but the Barrie Colts, they do have a full draft cupboard. So this is shaping up to be a very fun season in the Central Division. So if you're a Colts fan, it's going to be a ton of fun. Can't wait till puck drop on the regular season in September. Next, we take a look at the Brampton Steelheads, who are the clear favorite in the Ontario Hockey League heading into next season. Last year, the Steelheads, when they were playing in Mississauga, they ended up second in the Central Division, a record of 38, 22, and 8 in their power play unit. 21.3% was third best in the Central. Their penalty kill, though, 81.3%, so very strong there. It was second best in the Central. Top scorers last year for the Steelheads, Luke Misa led the way, 26 goals, 55 assists, 81 points. Porter Martone, 33 goals, 38 assists, 71 points. And Angus McDonnell, third in team scoring, 32 goals, 30 assists, 62 points. And in net, Jack Ivankovic, he had a .915 save percentage in his rookie season, and Ryerson Leanders, pretty good as well, a .909 save percentage. So the Steelheads, they're an example of how a team can build through the trade deadline. In 2023, they traded Ryan Del Mastro and Luca Del Bel Beluz to the Sarnia Sting, and that's how they acquired both Porter Martone and Angus McDonnell, who have been phenomenal since joining the Steelheads, and really they really get the offense going with the Steelheads team. They're going to be counted upon quite a bit going into next season. The Steelheads, they also have an enviable goaltending situation with Ryerson Leanders and Jack Ivankovic, both very capable starting goaltenders in the Ontario Hockey League. You almost have to wonder, is that going to be a bit of a deterrent for this team having a 1A, 1B situation, or are they going to be able to coexist and support one another, kind of like we saw with the Bruins with Allmark and Swayman. They had a great chemistry there in Boston, so it could work here at the junior hockey level as well with Ivan Kovic and Leanders. The Steelheads, of course, they have also acquired Carson Rakoff from the Kitchener Rangers. That'll help the offense. And then Spencer Sova coming over from the Erie Otters. The Otters captain will play his overage season with the Steelheads, so he brings that leadership capabilities. And I think this is shaping up to be a very strong team in the OHL. And this could be a team that, if they can get off to a hot start and you get that chemistry going, they could be the top team by the end of the regular season. So Brampton, we know they're all in. They're a favorite in the Central and Eastern Conference, and this is also the first season for the Steelheads at the CAA Center in Brampton, and it could be a memorable. And I don't think they're done adding. They still have some pieces that they could go out and pick up to add to this lineup. Next up, the Niagara Ice Dogs. They ended up 5th in the Central Division last year. A record of 17, 43, 6, and 2, good for 42 points. Their power play, it struggled last season at 10%. That was 5th in the division. The penalty kill, 75.9%, 4th. So specialty teams needs improvement going into next season for this Niagara Ice Dogs team. Their top scorers last year, Gavin Bryant, 21 goals, 33 assists, 54 points. Kevin He, 31 goals, 22 assists, 53 points. And then Ryan Robrick, 28 goals, 23 assists, 51 points. And that was in his rookie season. So some positives there for the Niagara Ice Dogs with both Kevin He and Ryan Robrick. In net, Owen Flores, he had an .885 save percentage. And then Charlie Robertson, an .882 save percentage. So this is a Niagara Ice Dogs team that they've been going through some lean years over the last 5 years. Last time they were in the playoffs was 2019. So it's been a long stretch of no playoff hockey in the city of St. Catharines. And I think I've mentioned this in other videos before when it comes to Niagara. It's the lack of consistency, as they've done so many trades these last couple of years that it's hard to really get a sense of, okay, who is the face of the franchise? And I think we're starting to get that now. We've got a bit of a foundation with Kevin He and Ryan Robrick. And they also have 4th overall pick, Brady Wasselin. So if they can keep these 3 players together and build around them, maybe in the next couple of seasons, this could be a team that challenges for top spot in the Central. In the meantime, I think Niagara might be fighting for a playoff spot this upcoming season. We did see them do a trade earlier this week. They were the middleman in the 3-way trade, which saw Bertucci end up with the Barrie Colts. So with that, the Niagara Ice Dogs, they did acquire Jack Browdy and Blair Scott from the Barrie Colts, while sending Urban Podrakar and Artem Frolov to the Flint Firebirds. So like I said, that consistency, players coming in, coming out, but they are getting some good players there with Browdy and Scott. I think more ice time for Blair Scott will help him on the blue line. And Jack Browdy, he was a rookie last year with the Barrie Colts, and I think he'll be able to get the ice time and really show what he's capable of with this Niagara Ice Dogs team. So some good opportunities for these 2 defensemen. Now, the Niagara Ice Dogs, they also made a trade back in June with the Sioux Greyhounds. That's where they picked up Matthew Virgilio, and that's to address some depth. So the Niagara Ice Dogs, they continue to add and send players out. So we'll see if they're ready to make that next step to being a playoff team, but it's not going to be easy this year. So they do have a full draft cupboard. However, the only thing missing right now is a second-round pick in 2025. So we'll see if they address that, or if maybe they'll try and add to clinch a playoff spot. Next up, we have the North Bay Battalion. They ended up 1st in the Central Division last year. They had a record of 39, 27, and 2, good for 87 points. Their power play, 22.8%, second best in the Central Division, while they had the best penalty kill unit in the Central at 82.3%. Their leading scorers last year, Anthony Romani led the way, 58 goals, 53 assists, good for 111 points. And then Dalen Wakely, he had 39 goals, 65 assists, 104 points. And Owen Van Steensel, 41 goals, 45 assists, good for 86 points. Those 3 were dynamite during the regular season and really, I think, made the North Bay Battalion choose to go for it last year, as they ended up going all the way to the Eastern Conference Final for the 3rd consecutive year. In net, Dom DiVincentis, .895 save percentage, a bit of a drop from the year before. While Mike McIver, he has an .876 save percentage in the regular season, but really stood out in the playoffs when DiVincentis went out due to injury. So I do like the chances there for North Bay with Mike McIver in net. As Dom DiVincentis, we're still waiting to find out if he comes back for an overage season. But if they don't get DiVincentis back, the battalion, I think, are in a pretty good spot with Mike McIver. So it has been a fun few seasons for fans in North Bay. Like I said, 3 straight years in the Eastern Conference Final. They did, like I said, get a breakout from Romani. Despite some injuries to DiVincentis, Mike McIver showed he was ready. So I do like how this North Bay Battalion team looks. However, I do expect them to take that step back. I had that same feeling last year, but they decided to, add to this lineup last year. So I think they should be taking a step back, but we'll have to wait and see. We'll see if they see something else that maybe they see a path to challenging for top spot in the Central. But right now, as it stands, I think with solid goaltending, and if Romani and Wakely can continue where they left off, this team could challenge for home ice advantage, I think, in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. But time will tell if that's the direction this team chooses. North Bay, they did trade veteran defenseman Tanias Mathurin to the Windsor Spitfires, but with half a dozen OA candidates on this battalion roster, something had to be done. So Mathurin, the odd man out, ending up in the West Division. So North Bay, they do have to restock this draft cupboard as they have Brantford's second round pick in 25 and then no seconds in 26 or 2027. And last but not least, the Sudbury Wolves, they ended up third in the Central last year, a record of 38, 23, 4, and 3, 83 points on the season. Their power play unit best in the Central Division at 25.2%, while their penalty kill third in the division at 78.3%. Leading the way in scoring last year, David Guyette, 40 goals, 77 assists, 117 points. He was rock solid last year. Quentin Musty, he had 43 goals, 59 assists, 102 points. And then Delibor Dvorsky, 45 goals, 43 assists, 88 points. So those were your top 3 scorers in Sudbury last year. In net, Jakob Vondras had an .861 save percentage and Marcus Vandenberg an .878 save percentage. Goaltending was a bit of a question mark last year for the Sudbury Wolves, but even the systems were kind of suspect at times. And I've already done a video talking about how last season was disappointing, but looking forward, I think the Wolves, they are in a very interesting position. It kind of reminds me of the Kitchener Rangers last year, where many thought they would take a step back and maybe fight for a playoff spot, but instead, the Kitchener Rangers held on to top spot in the Western Conference for almost half the season until London decided to show up and take them, knock them down to second in the Midwest Division. So I feel like with the returning players, they could contribute maybe a couple of additions here or there, and maybe the Sudbury Wolves could challenge for top spot in the Central. I think they might look in the other direction because of what's loading up in Brampton. But the biggest question, I think, going into next year is what do you do with Quentin Musty? We saw the Rangers, they cashed in on a trade with Rakoff, and the Firebirds, they also cashed in with a trade for Bertucci. So does Sudbury look to unload their veterans and rebuild for a future run, or try and stretch what they have now? Does Musty then stick around? Because he is a very talented forward, but if you're looking for the future, especially with the new arena coming up in 2028, you could restock the cupboards, get some young talent, and maybe that first year in the new barn, this team could be pretty good. But we'll have to wait and see what kind of direction they do, and I think it all starts with Quentin Musty. So they did send Nolan Collins, Evan Conyon, and Matthew Mania to the Flint Firebirds for Gavin Ewells and Dax Klinkhammer, plus 9 draft picks. So I think they're leaning towards a retool, but we'll have to wait and see. I think Sudbury should still be a playoff team in this upcoming season, but they do have a new voice behind the bench with Scott Barney. He's going to be the head coach of the Sudbury Wolves. So it's going to be a very fascinating look as to what the Sudbury Wolves team is going to do, because they can go in one of two directions. They've hit a fork in the road in their progression. Do they try and stretch it out, or do you retool and maybe go for a big push in your first season in the new barn now that you know that you have a new arena coming up in the next few years? So basically, in the Central Division, Brampton, they are the favorite to win the division, with the Barrie Colts probably not too far behind them. While North Bay and Sudbury, I expect them to be maybe middle of the pack teams in the Eastern Conference, while the Niagara Ice Dogs still likely fighting for a playoff spot. I would really like to see Niagara make the playoffs, end that playoff drought, but it's all going to, I think, come down to what kind of moves they make, or maybe they let that consistency start. Let that team kind of form themselves, but who knows? Let me know in the comments section down below your thoughts on the Central Division. Who do you think is going to take the division? Or how do you think things are going to play out with each of these teams? Love the interaction. Thank you very much for all your support. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.